Welcome to the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting of the 17th of March, and happy St Patrick's Day to everybody. Apologies, we have Councillor Wright. Would someone like to move that those be accepted? Councillor Price, Councillor Bogue, all those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried. Conflicts of interest? Nil. Public forum? Nil. Any announcements by the Mayor?
Nothing from me.
Thank you. No announcements by the chairperson. Announcements by management. Adele?
No, there's nothing, Chair, today. Thank you very much.
Confirmation of minutes. So the minutes of the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 3rd of February 2022, be taken as a true and accurate record of that meeting. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Crystal, second by Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Carried. Any minor matters that are currently not on the agenda? Nothing forthcoming. So our first agenda item is the quarterly report for the 6 months ended 31st of December 2021, and I'd invite Caroline.
Thank you. And through the chair, the year-to-date deficit of 1.7 million is 1.9 million favourable to the year-to-date budget for the 6 months ended 31st December 2021. The revenue for the parking and the business and tourism activities is lower than budget for the quarter due to the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown in August and the ongoing impacts from the COVID restrictions. And I'd just like to point out that there was no allowance for any COVID impacts on revenue in the 21-22 annual plan budgets. These activities are working hard to reduce the cost to offset lost revenue for the remainder of the financial year. However, the ongoing effect of COVID is likely to be significant. Year-end forecasting is underway to determine the overall financial impact to Council. The reduction in revenue from these activities has been offset by the timing of the receipt of financial contributions and revenue from subsidies and grants. Other operating expenditure is higher than budget, mainly due to increased insurance premiums and flooding costs, and this has been offset by the favourable variance for depreciation. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Just a question from the chair, Caroline. Can you give some rationale for why no allowance was made for COVID in this particular period?
Yes, so when we set the annual plan budget for 21-22, we had just come through the first COVID lockdown, and the business and tourism activities had bounced back and performed significantly better than what we had predicted. And so based on that, we continued on with our annual plan budgets and assumed no allowance for any COVID impacts.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Mayor Wise, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. And through the chair, just a couple of questions, just for clarification, Caroline. I note that in the group financial summary report on page 14, the stormwater OPEX is showing as a year-end favourable variance of 4.182 million, and rates and special funds is showing unfavourable by the same amount. Can you explain just, how that's arisen?
So both variances exactly offset each other, and the reason for that is previously, or prior to our revenue and financing review that we undertook, the stormwater activity was funded through general rates. We now collect the stormwater rate through a targeted rate. So the general rates have reduced by 4.1 and the targeted rate has increased for stormwater and the stormwater activity by the same amount.
So supplementary question that obviously will be rectified in budgets next year.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And one more question through the chair. Again, just with regards to the budget for the storage facility property purchase for the MTG, I note that the 1.8 million was not showing in the revised budget, and is that also because it's now being reported through a different line?
That is correct. It's sitting in the MTG section in the quarterly report. I think it's around about page 64. You'll see there's a line there that says under the MTG property purchase 1.8 million.
Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? There being none, would someone like to move the officer's recommendation that we receive the quarterly report for the 6 months ended 31st of December 2021? Councillor Crystal, seconded by Mayor Wise. Councillor Crystal, would you like to speak to that?
Just thank you for all the work on this, and I totally understand the tourism side deficit. I know that all operators are way down this year than last year, which was way down last year than before. So it's a significant effect on our council income, and it's going to take a long time to hopefully not too long to bounce back, but yeah, it's certainly significant. So thank you for all the work, but hopefully onwards and upwards with the borders opening soon.
Councillor McGrath, I see you've raised your hand. Did you have a question?
Yes, just a quick question, but it can actually wait to the end. If that's right, all right.
Well, we've actually got to moving the resolution, so we will be voting shortly. So if you have a question, I'd appreciate you ask that now.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'll hold it and talk to officers afterwards.
Thank you. Mayor Wise?
Thank you, through the chair. And I guess I just want to acknowledge, obviously, this is covering the first half of our financial year, and there has been a number of challenges, particularly within our tourism facilities, and that we have achieved a favourable 1.9 million compared to budget. Staff are to be commended for managing budgets as they have. Obviously, we still have a rocky road ahead of us through till the end of the financial year, being 30 June. And if we manage to maintain some sort of positive result at all, I think that'll be against all the odds. And we do just need to carry on doing everything we can to manage the budgets as well as we possibly can with all of the challenges that are ahead of us. So acknowledgement of all of the staff for all the hard work they're doing. Thank you.
Yes, I was going to make that comment from the chair that obviously this is for the first 6 months, and obviously now we're moving into the second 6 months. So things aren't changing too dramatically, and obviously budgets are being watched closely, but the end result is going to be significant, and we need to, in all our decision making over the next period through to the 30th of June, be well aware of the financial situation that the council could end up in. So, Councillor Bogue, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I totally agree with the positive statements that have been made about the efforts that staff have made to deal with this very uncertain and unstable and difficult times. But there's one aspect of staff support that I wanted to mention in particular that's been new and very effective and is mentioned in this report, and that's the customer service requests that we as councillors get from our constituents. There's been a very effective way put in place for us to work just with one staff member who directs them all to the appropriate staff member, and those are dealt with very effectively and very efficiently, and I do really appreciate how quickly the turnaround has been for any requests we get. So well done, and well done staff overall for what you've been able to achieve in the last 6 months. And here's hoping we have a better, 4 months ahead of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bogue. We have had a number of people speak in favour of receiving the report. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against receiving the report? There being none, I will move the resolution that we receive the quarterly report for the 6 months ended 31st of December 2021. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 2, which is the Hawke's Bay Airport Limited interim report for the 6 months ended 31st of December 2021. Carolyn, I think you're going to speak to this one as well.
Yes, through the chair, we have Wendy Harvey, the chair of the Hawke's Bay Airport, and also the acting CE Stephanie Murphy, about to join us, I think. But they just need John to let them in. And they
we're actually here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and welcome, Wendy and Stephanie. Caroline, are we going to just speak to the interim report initially before the draft statement of intent?
The airport have a presentation for us that covers both. Okay,
that's fine. Thank you. So we'll hand over to Wendy, and welcome and thank you very much for your attendance today, and obviously have been brought forward a few minutes, so thank you for being available so quickly. We'll hand it over.
Councillor Taylor. Look, not that we were eavesdropping, but I do have to say that in terms of the conversation that was just coming to an end before we came on, I think you'll find that our presentation is going to carry on very much in the same vein. So interesting times we live in, and genuinely hope you're all well and managing through COVID as we are. As Carolyn indicated, we have with us today Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie stepped in. Stephanie is normally our, what's your official title? Strategy and planning?
Yeah.
Yes. Is in her day job our strategy and planning manager. So she is the person that you would have seen previously who's been responsible for the development of the airport's master plan and has a lot of engagement with council. But when Stuart departed in December last year, Stephanie agreed to step up and cover the CEO role until we have made an appointment. Within the next couple of days, I do hope on behalf of the board to be able to actually let you know, let all our shareholders know that we have made an appointment. And whilst we've concluded our negotiations and have a signed contract, so we do have a warm body, as it were, but we're just in the process at the moment of making arrangements with our successful incumbent, but at this point it looks like he will be on the ground just after Easter, so we're hugely appreciative of the efforts that he's made to exit from his current employment to be here and join us. But look, I just want to acknowledge the work that Stephanie has done over the past 3 months and what's been, as you'd appreciate, incredibly testing times. We have had corporate staff members actually have COVID, and Stephanie and her team have basically it looks effortless, but have stepped into the breach, and we've managed to ensure that our operations have been able to continue. So just without further ado, I do want to take the opportunity to go through the draft SOI that we have forwarded to you. It would have been a couple of weeks ago now, and just really want to take you through our presentation and focus on what's underpinning the proposed document as we have it. So if I can get you to bring your presentation up. John, if you'd mind casting that, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, we'll whip to page 2, please. Right, so we're controlling it at your end, are we?
Yes,
Okay,
we are.
great, thank you. All right, what we have done is refresh the SOI to align with some work that we did towards the end of last year, which was to review our strategy. What we've done is focused on, rather than the traditional vision, mission, values, is we've actually sat down and thought about why are we here? What do we exist to do? And that's to connect people, business and regions. And, you know, so what we're trying to focus on is how do we measure our performance? We have made a clear, a conscious decision to move to becoming a transport hub, and we want to measure our success in the context of that. So that's why we've shifted towards the purpose and vision that you see before you. One of the things that I did want to just highlight is that one of the key things that doesn't come up at the beginning is that we previously said that that everything we did was about sustainability. We've invested a lot of work over the past 2 years in developing our sustainability strategy. You'll have noticed previously we've achieved level 2 accreditation in the airport carbon accreditation process. It's a long name. And we are continuing on that journey with that accreditation and currently working on level 3. But we're at a point where we discussed it that sustainability is an inherent part of what we're about, just as health and safety is. And so what we've done is tried to ingrain that in each of our key strategic code, which you'll also see on the screen, and which haven't changed. So our operations, our people, our environment, our partnerships, and our commercial success remain key focus areas underpinning our strategy. John, if you could just move to the next slide, please. Just in terms of the key, I guess, parts of the draft SOI, I think one of the things that's easiest to explain it is that there are things that clearly are within our control and things that are outside of our control. And passenger numbers, unfortunately, in a COVID environment are very much outside of our control. So the current year was based on a much stronger recovery of passenger numbers than what we could have, we couldn't have anticipated, I think, the impact of Omicron on our passenger numbers. Essentially then what we've seen is, based on the analysis that's been provided to us, we continue our relationship with Christchurch Airport around that analysis for passenger numbers. What I'm suggesting to you is that essentially we've taken what we were looking for in the SOI 21-22 and transferred it forward essentially 12 months. So the information that we have through our discussions with Air New Zealand basically anticipates that we are going to look at around about 520 passenger numbers, all things being in the lap of the gods really, but that was the number, give or take, what we were looking for this year. We're anticipating, with the opening of the borders, with the domestic tourism recovering to some extent, those are the numbers that we're basing it on for this year coming forward. One of the things I think is quite important, I talk about what we can control and what we can't control. Passenger numbers are outside of our control, but actually the landing charges, they're pretty fixed regardless of the passenger numbers. And I say that because the way that our pricing is based with Air New Zealand is that we derive a revenue based off the CapEx and the OpEx that are incurred in terms of delivering up an airport service. So if we undercut it in 1 year, the next year when we're resetting our passenger landing charges, with Air New Zealand, then essentially there's that reconciliation of numbers that flow over or roll over year to year. So although we haven't had the passenger numbers this year that we anticipated, we will be able to recover that or catch up next year through the landing charges when they're reset. What we won't be able to do, of course, is recover those revenue streams that are dependent on passengers, such as car parking and the concession payments. So what we're looking to achieve next year's revenue of $9 million and showing a modest profit of $250,000. The one area that we feel we can influence much more significantly than passenger numbers is in the area of the non-aeronautical revenues. So looking at the commercial property, looking at what we're doing in terms of maximising the new terminal space and new concession arrangements, advertising and so on. Those things that we believe we can encourage our team to focus on for the forthcoming year, and what we are setting a target of is a 30% increase year on year in our non-aeronautical growth. We continue to strive for zero lost time injuries. And I think the other thing that we need to remember is that essentially, even though we like to look at solar parks, commercial property, and continue in our strategy of diversification of revenue streams, we still need to remember that we have to ensure we have a fit for purpose airport. So in that regard, what you'll see towards the end of the presentation is just a breakdown on the CapEx that we're proposing for next year. Again, that's a shift from what we were looking to incur this year, flying over to next year. There's always, I guess, a judgment call to be made about whether or not you continue to invest in your runways and aprons and so on. But I guess the only upside that I can think of zero passenger or declining passenger numbers this year is that obviously the wear and tear on the tarmac and so on is so much less. So based on our condition assessment of our assets, which we have continued to do during the year, we feel quite confident that that deferral of that CapEx into the next year is within the boundaries of what's safe and ensuring a fit for purpose airport. We continue to strive to invest in our team, and we'll do so next year. I guess if we're looking at what our focus will be next year in terms of our, I guess, increase that we're potentially looking at, that will be in the fire crew, recognising that some of the challenges that come out of operating in a COVID environment is the need to cover shifts in a bubble type arrangement. So we'll also be looking there in terms of ensuring that we provide great career development opportunities and, you know, things like employee support services to our team. As I mentioned at the outset, we continue to strive towards our airport carbon accreditation strategy, and level 3 is very much on the cards proposed for next year. Growing our partnerships, hopefully next week we'll be in a position to make an announcement to you that we actually have entered into a memorandum of understanding with a partner to continue the progress on the solar park initiative. So where we sit in terms of that announcement at the moment is that the purpose of our MOU is to basically help us to progress to the next point of consenting, seeking consent for the project, and that will be very much our focus over the next 12 months. And finally, one of the things that we have made a conscious choice this year to continue to invest in is our customer experience. And we, during the year, employed a dedicated person who was focused on our customer experience. Judy comes to us with extensive background in the airport sector, which included at one point Changi International Airport. So she's bringing a lot of enthusiasm, but also some fantastic ideas about how we can manage that experience for people who are transferring through the airport. So high level, pretty much on track with what you've seen previously, albeit 12 months out. So John, if you could just move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just in terms of the impact to date and where we're tracking, obviously it doesn't make for great reading when you see the passenger numbers, and certainly in terms of that proposed or anticipated 500,000 customer passengers for this year, you'll see that we're anticipating by the end of by the close of financial year in June that we would have done probably around about 380,000 passengers. You would have also seen that at the 6-month point we were 81,000 passengers behind. We're not forecasting to recover that, albeit even if the borders are opening up soon. I don't think there's a lot to say about that slide. So John, can you move on to the next one, please? So I'm going to hand over to Stephanie in a moment, but just to say to you that, you know, part of our de-risking the businesses and ensuring that we have that resilience to endure beyond COVID is that diversification and growth strategy. One of the things that strikes me as I look around other regional airports is that in some ways maybe they haven't been impacted so significantly as we have because they have another string in their bow. So if you look at Palmerston North Airport, they have many commercial properties on the land surrounding the airport. So they've continued to derive income from those property arrangements. If you look at Nelson, we do 200 tonnes of air freight per annum. They do 2,000 tonnes of air freight per annum. So we're very much about looking for that other string in the bow to de-risk the business. And as we've talked previously, that diversification strategy is underpinned predominantly through the development of the commercial property area, both along Watchman Road and actually also to the north of the terminal. We also, as I also indicated, looking to develop our solar park, and that continues to be a heavy part of our focus. So I'm now going to switch over to you, Stephanie, and perhaps John, if you can move to the next slide, and Stephanie, I'll hand over to you.
Great. So Wendy touched on just previously the appointment that we've had of our customer experience and marketing manager towards the end of last year. As Wendy mentioned, Judy joins us from Singapore and has had quite a lot of experience at Changi and other airports around the world, which is fantastic. So part of the customer experience and marketing strategy going forward is looking at sort of 3 key areas. So the first is actually to say, well, our proposition is not actually from a car park to gate experience. It's actually from the time you leave home to the time you actually get on the plane. And what are all the touch points that you actually have in your journey to actually become a passenger on an aircraft? So part of what we're looking towards is to see how we can actually use technology to influence that, whether or not that's actually understanding where are the roadworks on the network, how many different aspects that you cross over to be able to get to the airport. When you arrive here, the ease of access into our car parking system, whether or not it's using Paywave or apps or booking online, actually just really embracing that space. And then it's very intuitive once you actually arrive and then you actually transit through. We've seen the likes of Air New Zealand and other suppliers actually go to a very technology-based system. We will have the app on our phone and we can book in online. So what we're trying to do is connect into that space as well from an experience perspective. Also, things in the terminal, you will have noticed for those of you that have been out recently with the new terminal, is actually a lot of our advertising and digital space that we have. So being able to use that to actually, one, grow from a revenue stream perspective, but also to be able to use that into the future as opposed to the old school way of picking up a brochure in a terminal and off you trundle with it. Other things, the ambassador program. We've had the ambassador program operational since 2019. They joined us when we had about 695,000 passengers and we were operating essentially 2 separate terminals. That photo in the middle of the slide there was taken in the beginning of August last year when we first opened the new facility. And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, they all went home as well as we did. So we haven't had the ambassadors on site since then, and mainly that is for their protection. They're an older group of people, but we feel that the ambassadors bring a very different and a uniquely Hawke's Bay experience to Hawke's Bay Airport. We're hoping that they will be returning in April, whether or not it's before or after Easter. We're just working through those details at the moment as they really need to a whole new induction process. A couple of other things in the customer experience space is we are activating the terminal in relation to different Hawke's Bay events. So if you were out here during, for example, Art Deco, we actually had an entire Art Deco activation within the terminal. We're working with the likes of Biodiversity Hawke's Bay, and we'll be bringing Environment Week to the terminal, which will probably be over about a month, supporting the Hawke's Bay Marathon, those type of aspects actually being activated and celebrated within the terminal. The third picture on the right-hand side of the slide is the proposed children's area that we are looking to have constructed within the terminal. Airports are funny places. Everyone sees the children putting their fingers on the glass screen along the front of the terminal, and what we're wanting to do is create a space where children can actually interact and understand a little bit more about the airport going forward. The concept was originally worked on with design students from EIT, and it's now been taken up and developed further by FPG, who have done the retail fit out for Bay Espresso. So this, along with the likes of Valentino's that have joined us, Bay Espresso, are some of the things that Judy is going to be focusing on in the customer experience and marketing space going forward. So I'll move just to the next slide if that's possible, please, John, which is focus area number 3. Wendy's already touched on this, and we do have some exciting news coming in the coming week in relation to our partnership. This is an artist's impression of what the solar farm will potentially look like over the other side, and you'll probably be able to see and make out the terminal and also the control tower as landmarks. Hawke's Bay Airport, as you're aware, is 230 hectares of land, 115 of that based on the work that we did for the master plan is actually required for aeronautical infrastructure into the future. So we essentially have the other half, 115 hectares of land, both airside and landside, actually available for future development. So the solar farm will be in the order of about 30 to 35 hectares of land on the western side of the runway, which pretty much grows nothing other than a little bit of grass, and I wouldn't say it's the most highly productive land in the world. So that's the location of it. What the solar farm does is core to our sustainability strategy, but it's also another part of our revenue diversification. So into the long term, once the project's actually constructed, it does provide and will continue to provide another source of revenue. It is also another option from a resilience perspective for us, and as you're aware, we're a lifeline, so again it provides that other aspect to Hawke's Bay Airport going forward. If we could just nip to the next slide, please. Thank you. This just highlights the outlook for FY22, the end of the financial year. As Wendy mentioned before, we hopefully, depending on how things happen in the next month with the reopening of the borders, we're looking at around 387,000 passengers, which is approximately 16% below FY21, and a revenue which will be about 6.5 million, with a loss all up of about 643,000. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. This just sort of provides in context passenger numbers, where we propose to land, similar to what was covered off on the previous slide as well. And we're just sort of seeing that progression. I guess where we're proposing to land this year is where we were in about 10 years ago. As you recall, pre-COVID times, we were actually sitting at close or above 750,000 passengers. So it's going to take us a few years, depending on how growth comes back from passengers and sort of the interest in people wishing to travel, as to where we get to. But that's sort of looking forward to June 2025, getting back to that sort of early 600 numbers. We would like to think it's a lot more, but I just don't think we have a crystal ball in that space as to how people feel about travel. We can move on to the next slide, please. So this sort of comes into the next round of the, I guess, to the SOY, and just to really provide an overview on the P&L headlines. So I'll hand over to Wendy to cover off those.
Okay, thanks, Steve. One of the things I would just add in terms of those passenger numbers is that, as I said, to some extent they're outside of our control, but we have invested quite an amount of time in the last 6 months, certainly, in trying to look at direct, point-to-point development of additional routes. So we have been in discussion with Dunedin. We obviously have Origin, who continue to be our other airline that's operating out of the airport. What I would say at this point in time is that our ability to add new routes, and they're a long-term opportunity for us, really, and they to some extent depend quite significantly on Air New Zealand's ability to provide aircraft to support those additional routes. So at this point, we'd say definitely on the table for discussion, but haven't got a likely prospect until, I'd say, at the earliest 2023. The other thing is that we continue to focus on general aviation and look for opportunities to increase in that space as well. So looking at the P&L headlines, what I'd say is what I've already said, which is that we're essentially looking to shift forward by 12 months. The key difference in that revenue forecast is actually what I've just spoken about playing out, which is that rollover where you've had diminished passenger numbers because you're paid on a per passenger basis. That will flow through into the landing charges for next year. As I said, we are looking at a slight return to profitability next year. Again, it is what it is, but we continue to see diversification flowing through into those numbers as well. So, John, if you could move to the next presentation, thank you. Just in terms of the balance sheet, we will continue to see that debt level of around about 26 million for at least the next couple of years. That's flowed through to some extent the timing around the completion of the terminal and the ongoing requirement or the flow over of CapEx. And I guess the other thing is realistically, we are going to pay more for what we are getting. But we do see, based on our forecast numbers going forward, that we will start to be able to pay down debt from around about 2024. So I'll move on to the next slide, and I think the final slide, thanks, John. Okay, and that's just, again, talking about where we're at in terms of our CapEx spend anticipated for 2023. That apron and taxiway maintenance is the deferred spend from this current year. And the other thing that we're also looking to do is to replace the second airport fire truck. Look, in an ideal world, we'd be sitting there saying that technology's advanced to a point where we can look at an electric fire truck. The world hasn't moved that fast in the sense that you can get an electric truck, you can't get, you must use diesel to pump the water. So one of the things that we are considering is the potential to maybe look at an interim measure. We know that the Air Force is looking to divest a number of appliances in the next 2 years, and there may be an opportunity to secure an appliance on an interim basis while the world catches up with the need to pump water with something other than diesel. But look, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. The other thing that I would just add to this is that we have made the offer to Hastings District Council just in terms of the proposal around the property development and also where we're looking to locate the solar park and so on. And also, I guess the other thing is our much hoped for completion of the Terminal Forecourt. We would like to extend the opportunity for councillors to join us towards the end of May, perhaps to go for a tour of the airport. I'm sure most of you have been through the terminal at some stage before now, but basically you'll be seeing hopefully a completely finished terminal and forecourt, and we'll be able to just, I guess, bring to life how the property and solar park strategy is going to roll out across the site. So that's pretty much it from us. If you've got any questions, very happy to take them from you.
Thank you, Wendy and Stephanie, for that presentation. I'm sure everybody would be sympathetic to the situation that you find yourself in and current. I would like to say that I welcomed an overseas visitor this week, and it was my first visit to the new terminal, and the visitor from Australia was very impressed with our regional airport. So congratulations, it's outstanding and obviously just going to improve. Do I have any questions? Councillor Tapani.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Fantastic report, guys, and just like our staff at Napier City, all of our operational staff across our organisations seem to be more like magicians and superheroes around managing the variables that we're all facing. So congratulations on the continual innovation and work that you and your team are doing under these uncertain times, as well as the change of some of your key staffs, such as the departure of Stuart. My question has to deal with the comments you shared with us around your diversification and strategy. And you indicated that north of the terminal currently might be one of those spaces to consider for expansion and growth. So my question is, we talked about another string in the bow, we talked about comparisons with other airports in New Zealand. I'm conscious of the fact that we are in the middle of a sensitive environment, our airport. And so my question is, do you see any opportunity in the future for the airport at this stage? It's still early, but do you see any opportunities to diversify and expand outside of your current footprint, so that you might be able to still add a string to your bow without continuing to push the boundaries around those sensitive environments?
Thank you for the question. I guess at the moment, Hawke's Bay Airport is in the privileged position that it has 230 hectares of land. As I mentioned before, we have 115 of that, which is dedicated to aeronautical infrastructure. Now, some of that is clearly built already. That also provides for an extension to the runway and also parallel taxiways, etc., that will be required airside into the future, when you'll probably recall I presented on our master plan circa 12 months ago. And so, in my personal opinion, at this point in time, I don't think that there is a need for Hawke's Bay Airport to be going further than its 230 hectares of land. We, as you rightly pointed out, to the southern end, we have the Ahuriri Estuary. We also have the West Shore Wildlife Reserve to the east. To the north, we have the marshlands as well. So going beyond those areas from a physical expansion perspective, I don't think is currently required, based on the work that was done for the master plan, looking out to 2040 and 1.5 million passengers. I don't believe that's required. There may be an opportunity to work with our new neighbour to the east, as far as the land called Farm and Mana Ahuriri Trust collectively, and an opportunity, but not for core aeronautical infrastructure or for pure property development.
So just to clarify, when talking about to the north, we're talking around where the Skyline Aviation site is, so it's through there. Part of the reason why that's quite an attractive proposition to maybe look at earlier than what we initially anticipated is that if we develop through that side of the property, does give us great access to the solar park. So that's why we're looking at that perhaps a little earlier. But can't underestimate or can't understate what Stephanie said, is that if we look to the east at our opportunities to develop partnerships there, that will never be off the table.
Any further questions? I have a question just in procedure matters for you, Wendy. We had a public excluded item, which was to be heard after this. However, I understand that you were quite happy with the Hastings District Council for your report to shareholders or stakeholders to be in public. So what you've covered in your presentation today, is there anything further that we will be receiving should we need to go into public excluded?
No, that's it. So,
okay. Yeah. So if we move a resolution that we accept your interim report to the 31st of December, the draft statement of intent for 2022-23 and your report to shareholders to the 31st of December 2021, we will have covered off your reports.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so do I have a mover for those three parts to this resolution? Councillor Simpson, seconder Councillor Tapani. Okay, Councillor Simpson, do you wish to make a comment?
Only to say that the reports are both thorough, insightful, and provide us a clear pathway or direction that the airport is heading. As sad as the COVID event has been, I think they give us confidence that they're handling the business well, and their reports and documentation has been comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tapani has nothing further to add, so I'll put those three resolutions, which are the interim report to the 31st of December, the draft statement of intent for 2022-23, and the Hawke's Bay Airport Limited half-year report to shareholders to the 31st of December. All those in favour, please say aye. Raise your hand. Against? Carried. Thank you very much for that presentation. And that brings us to the close of our open part of the Prosperous Napier. So I'll close this meeting and we will come back very shortly with the public excluded. Could I have someone move that we go to public excluded? Councillor Crown, seconded by Councillor Price. All of those in favour, please raise their hand. Carried. Take a short break and we'll come back public excluded. Thank you.